This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast with the spotlight on section hikers.
And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, your premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers, and I am your host, Julie Jester Gayhart. This week, I'm going to start off the show a little bit different by reading you an email that I received from a listener a few weeks back. Good evening, Julie. You mentioned on your January 1st, 2022 podcast that you were open to ideas for guests coming on your show. I thought I would see if you would consider having me on your podcast. I am currently section hiking the Smokies, working on my Smoky Mountain 900 miler map. I'm from Southwest Indiana and make roughly monthly trips, getting anywhere from 20 to 45 miles total in a trip. I work weekends, so it's easy for me to find 4 days to put together. Sometimes I backpack, sometimes I day hike, and sometimes I car camp in the campgrounds. Sometimes I bring another hiker, sometimes my husband comes along. Those are the lower mileage trips. Sometimes I'm solo, and now I've met several locals who hike with me when they can. One of the ways I document my journey is through a YouTube channel titled Cindy Hikes. I vlog every trail with the intent of showing the junctions, talking about the trail, explaining my planning of each trip, offering tips which direction to hike, giving advice on the Smoky Mountains 900. I am about the worst at videography, but I had trouble finding good, solid information on the SM 900 and the trails and how to connect them and what routes to take. I do have and use books and reference guides, but I'm a visual learner and I figured others out there were like me and would get something out of the vlogs. I am also a healthcare worker, an MRI technologist who scans COVID patients every day. One of the reasons I got so heavily into backpacking and eventually decided to start my Smokies map was because of my mental health. It truly is a closer to God experience, even when I'm laughing it up with my friends and fellow hikers. I'm in no way any type of expert, but I'm okay talking about that as well. Actually, the reason I started backpacking at all, it started the year before COVID when I lost my parents, 3 days apart. And just as my mind was clearing from that, COVID happened. So I can only speak for myself, but hiking and having goals has kept me sane and healthy. Anyway, if you think about my journey and you think it would be a good fit in your lineup this year, let me know. I'd be happy and excited to offer your listeners my take on traveling and hiking, mental health, or whatever. I look forward to hearing from you. All the best, Cindy Taylor. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode, everybody, and I hope you guessed it. Cindy Taylor is on to share with us her journey to section hiking and to one day completing all the trails in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And now on to Cindy. All right, you guys, please welcome with me to the podcast, Miss Cindy Taylor. Hey, Cindy, good to have you.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely 100%. And the listeners just got done listening to me read your email that you sent me a few weeks ago. And so they have a little bit of a background and why you wrote me. And we're going to just dive right into this thing. So you ready?
Sounds great. I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start with some real basics that I really don't think is basic based on your letter into why you started backpacking.
Mm-hmm. So I've always been a day hiker. I grew up camping and hiking around the Indiana state parks. And when I was 19 was my first trip to the Smoky Mountains. And I've day hiked in the Smoky Mountains since. But in February of 2019, I lost both of my parents within 3 days. It was a really rough time. And I had started to I started hiking more so solo hiking and hiking both here and in the Smokies solo. And I had heard of the Smoky Mountain 900 miler by this time, but I was working 5 days a week like everyone else. And I live 6.5 hours away from the Smokies. I live in Southwest Indiana. So it was a little unfeasible for me at that time to start hiking to finish my map. And for those of you who don't know, the Smoky Mountain 900 miler is a club that you can belong to once you have hiked all of the trails in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This was interesting to me, but I thought it would be something that maybe I'd do as a day hike only. But then once my parents died and I started solo hiking, I started getting into, well, hey, maybe I could backpack. And I started YouTubing ideas and, how to take care of ticks that get on you or how not to get them on you.
That's the key.
It really is the key. It really is. What kinds of lightweight equipment I could use. And I started buying things. And by January of 2020, I had my first backpacking trip. It was a 1-night trip in the Hoosier National Forest, just about 2 hours away from my home. It was absolutely wonderful. And I was hooked. And then a few weeks later, COVID happened for me, at least. It happened a month earlier.
Gotcha, because you're in healthcare. So let's unpack this a little bit more. So in 2019, I cannot imagine losing both sets of parents 3 days apart.
It was the toughest week I've ever been through. And my mom was, we knew that my mom was going to pass. She had cancer and her deal was she wanted to pass at home. And so we were all prepared. At the time, my dad had started with dementia a few years earlier. He'd had a lot of cardiovascular issues. He had a couple brain aneurysms, one that ruptured big, and he survived that 20 years. But he was starting to go through a lot of dementia. What we didn't know is he was at the end stage of dementia. And
wow.
The morning after Mom passed, and he passed where she was laying on the couch, he would have said he died of a broken heart, but he really stroked out. And so he passed at home a couple days after that. And it was very, very difficult. My parents were older. Obviously, they were in the early 70s. And, we all go through that time where we know that our parents are going to be passing. But for me, I felt like an orphan in a very short period of time. And I'm a pretty strong person. I've been through a lot, not just through healthcare. And, I handled it well, I believe. But one of the ways that helped me through it was hiking. In fact, the month after they passed, my husband and I took our first hike up to Mount LeConte, which, if you don't know, is the second or third highest peak in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but it is the tallest from base to summit mountain.
It is absolutely gorgeous up there.
It's breathtaking.
I can see why you wanted to go up there.
Yeah.
After the passing of both your parents.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then COVID happens.
Yes.
And you're in healthcare. So we're in 2020. So let's talk about, you starting to hike and then this COVID happening?
Yes. So COVID happened. Unfortunately, though, for me, COVID kind of came in a month earlier because my aunt was one of the first people around here who passed of it without them really knowing what it was at the time.
Oh my God.
It was
I'm not
tough...
laughing. I'm in shock.
Yes, it was very shocking. It was very tough. And so this is why hiking and backpacking turned into such a, not just a spiritual movement for me, but a way to stay mentally healthy. I did stop hiking and backpacking for about a month when COVID hit the mainstream, because we were all scared. Nobody knew what was going on. And I knew that I was in the trenches and I didn't want to pass that to anyone. So
Right.
I would
So what do you do when you say you're in the trenches? Tell us, what exactly is it that you do?
So I am an MRI technologist. So I work in the radiology department and I perform MRI scans on patients, both outpatients and inpatients. I do work at a level 2 trauma hospital. And so we were scanning COVID patients from the get-go. There are certain brain situations that occur when you have COVID. And then, people who are in the hospital who get COVID were in the hospital for another reason. So we were scanning patients daily. The problem, the sensitive part to MRI versus any other place in the hospital is that an MRI is a powerful magnet. Our weakest MRI is 20,000 times stronger than the Earth's magnetic pull. So the equipment that every other place in the hospital or anywhere else uses to clean the rooms, to sanitize the rooms, which are UV lighting, we could not take into our MRI suites. So when we had a COVID patient, we were having to do things called terminal cleaning, which would be hours on end. And this was a process that was very stressful on an already busy schedule. And so there was just a lot of mental stress and anguish going on. And I would come home and I'd strap a backpack full on my back and I'd get on my treadmill just to feel like I was, doing something, until I finally said, okay, this is enough. I have to get out into the woods because it's for my mental health.
Did you have to almost put yourself in folders? That's what I call it. Like, okay, when I go to work, I'm in this folder and I have to deal with what's there. And, when I'm, you still have the grieving folder is what I'm going to call it. And, then your aunt, and then I'm moving my hands in the video so Cindy can see me like I'm, teaching in the classroom. And then I call it the unknown folder of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Quite literally, it was almost like files or bags. So I couldn't take my grief to work, but I had to put it away because we were dealing with patients who were dying, just like my aunt. But also, I would come to work and put my clothes on, and then before I got out of my garage at night, strip down so that I didn't bring that home to my family. And then, of course, nobody was going out and doing anything, but we were trying to make a normal life at home as well. And so when you're trying to make a normal life and everybody's uncertain, you also can't unpack your grief. So maybe the trail was where I unpacked my grief. And we all made it. Everything, everything is getting better, I believe, but I'm just one of numerous, and not just healthcare workers, who had to compartmentalize their mental health in these situations. So that's what I did.
Wow. So here we are, even during the midst of all this, and you're refiling these folders, you take on a new project. And hiking is not new to you. You're throwing your backpack on at night on the treadmill, but you decide to take on this project of completing the 900-miler map in the Smokies. And not only do you decide to take that on, but you decide, there wasn't all this adequate information out there. So you decided to create a YouTube channel and start giving people that information. So I want to walk through that, why you decided to do that. But the mental health aspect of it is, to me, is first and foremost, to the front of this episode, because it sounds like to me the way you were able to file everything is by going into these projects. Am I wrong on that? Into this new project of hiking the Smokies.
That is exactly how I handled it. Yes. I am a goal-oriented person. And so I do need projects. And, when you're in the depths of despair, you look for a way out. And the most positive way out for me was to dive into backpacking, something I had already started and I knew I could do and I liked, and I just dove right in.
So why the Smokies 900 versus a long distance trail? You're very close to Ohio, maybe the Buckeye Trail, the North Country Trail. You're in that zone of the United States. Why the Smokies?
Yes. So I've been to the Smokies since I was 19 years old with my parents. And ever since then, like my husband and I go down at least twice yearly. There's something about the Smokies that has my heart and my soul, and I feel at home. I feel closer to God. I feel like this is just where I'm supposed to be. And I did consider some longer trails. I even honestly considered maybe taking a leave of absence, but that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. I had to make backpacking work with my work schedule. And then something happened in the fall of 2020 where I was able to move from a weekday job to a weekend job. But what this really afforded me was to work 3 12-hour shifts in a row and then have 4 days off, so that when I left that last 12-hour shift, I could drive down to the Smokies and in the next morning start my backpacking trip. And so I could have gone to Ohio. We have some long trails. They're not very long, but we do have some long trails in Indiana, and I did hike those. There's the Sheltowee Trace. I considered doing that as well. But the Smoky Mountain 900 miler was a goal, and a goal that I could do over time. I'm goal oriented, but I don't have to finish anything in a time frame. I'm not very competitive. So I wanted this to last. I wanted to be able, and it seemed like a pretty big, 900 miles, although the actual trail miles are only 800 at this point. 900 miles sounded like a lot that I could do.
Yeah.
Whereas and at some point I will also do the AT, but that was just even more, although I did do a small section in Georgia back in the fall, that is a little more daunting than spending a few years completing a map.
Yeah. And then, so, the Smoky Mountains is the number one visited national park in the United States, and has a lot of international visitation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it is absolutely beautiful. And you were talking about going up to Mount LeConte, and that's a special place. You can get a sunrise, a sunset.
Very much.
So I do recommend people going up there. But the beauty of what you said, when your work schedule changed, at the end of, was it 2020 or 2021?
2020 was when my work schedule changed.
That afforded you to go to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park when the crowds leave after the weekend.
Yes. And not only that, a lot of these trails, everybody knows how packed the Smokies are. In fact, there might be a little bit of an issue of how packed they are lately with COVID happening. But once you get past those first couple miles of the most popular trails, or once you started a trailhead of a trail that a lot of people haven't heard of, you hardly see anyone.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice. But I took my first backpacking trip in the Smokies. I'd never backpacked in the Smokies on February 8th of 2021. So that's when I actually started my map. And what I decided to do, because I had some time there to research, and I am a research nerd, and I have all my books, but I didn't see a lot on YouTube. I would see the popular trails like the LeContes. I would see the Abrams Falls trails. I'd see the Ramsey Cascades.
Like
but
Chimney Tops, that
exactly.
Stuff, yeah.
But if I wanted to see what this campsite was on Nolan Creek, I really can't find that, or I'd have to search for hours to find that. And then I tried finding some people who've completed their 900 miles, and they would have some really good information, but they wouldn't have all of their trails on there. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, and I'd never vlogged before, I'd never blogged before, I've never done anything like that. But I thought, surely I can do it. I've got a camera. I've got a computer to edit. I can take my camera with me. I can show each and every trail on the 900 miler, and that could be my way to document. I mean, I also document the proper ways that the club wants you to document it, but I could document it and I could show people, okay, this is what this campsite looks like. And I do tend to forget to record the really hard ups, but I can at least kind of show them the trail.
We'll forgive you on that, okay, Cindy? We'll forgive you. You don't have to record every hard up. Okay?
Right. Trying to get better at that.
There's way too many in Smokies, okay?
That is so true. That is so true.
So let's get into this. So you've decided to take on the journey of completing the 900 miles, and the reason I think you said it's 800 and something, but it ends up being around 900 because you end up having to double back on some trails and do some trails more than once, you know, to connect to other trails and make it happen. And that's part of the logistics that I want to get into. So, and you've decided to document your journey and the logistics. So let's give the people, the listeners, some guides. So right now, what if somebody says, I want to do this, the first thing they need to do is buy the dollar map at any one of the visitor centers in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and that'll get everybody started. But what
Absolutely.
other guides do you use?
I would first suggest to buy about 10 of those maps for various reasons, but you're going to want to have those maps. You're going to have ones that you mark on, that you officially mark on. You're going to have ones that you don't want to mark on. There might be one where you want to show different signs, but then past that, so I would suggest getting on the website smhclub.org. That is Smoky Mountain Hikers Club.org. On that website is a bunch of information, including an Excel spreadsheet that you will use to actually document each trail, each little junction. Sometimes there's a little 0.3 or a 0.2. That spreadsheet will guide you on exactly what you need and what you don't need, because there are a few trails in the Smokies that aren't on the 900 miler, such as the nature trails. I think there might be a horse trail that's not on it. So I definitely would go to that website and download that Excel spreadsheet. But also there is a little brown book that's called Hiking Trails of the Smokies. There are various authors, because what they do is every few years they go and certain people hike certain sections to make sure that they've got their information correct or something hasn't changed. That book is excellent. It has an elevation profile. While it's not the most accurate, it does give you an idea of, are you going to go straight up the whole time? Are you going to go up, down, and up? That kind of thing. So, and it's got a lot of good information, trailhead information in it. There's also a book by Liz Eitner out called Day Hiker's Guide to All the Trails in the Smoky Mountains. So she basically wrote that book so that you could show you how you could day hike all of the trails. Now, if you day hike all of the trails, your total miles hiked is going to be pretty high. I think anywhere from 12 to 1,500 miles. But it can be done. You have to use some of the boat-in campsites that they have and things like that. But she kind of gives you an idea of how you can do it in a day hike. I wouldn't always use that, though, because there's no elevation guide on that. And sometimes the direction she goes makes the trail harder. So we work smarter, not harder. We hike smarter, not harder.
Well, that's part of you know, the beauty of what you're doing, and what I love is that you are doing your own research and you're compiling a lot of assets, you know, to look at. And that's what a good steward at the Great Smoky Mountains National Trail does, who wants to hike. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's not just for me to get to the hike and get the hike done. It's also for my safety. There's a lot of, like right now, you know, or I should say, as we're recording this, there's a lot of snow in the Smokies. And if you don't know what you're doing and you get on a trail that maybe be higher in elevation and you don't realize it without microspikes, well, guess what? Either you can't do it or you're going to risk yourself from injury. So to me, all of the research is very important. I do think everybody should do their own research, but I think these books, these resources, and YouTube videos and Facebook pages like Hiking the Smokies, and one that I've actually started, Smoky Mountain 900 Miler Gals, those are very helpful. And there's all kinds of people on, especially the Hiking the Smokies, that will tell you, oh yeah, you can do this, but you need to do it the other direction, because if you don't, you've got 1,200 feet of elevation gain in a three-quarters of a mile type thing. So those have been very helpful. I also go
and you
on.
guys, I'm going to pause this right here. I'm going to get every single one of these informational Facebook pages and guides and all that stuff, websites from you, Cindy, and I'm going to put them in the show notes if you don't
Sure
mind.
thing. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No. I did use YouTube channels. There were a lot of good YouTubers out there. Hiking with Braids is one of them. Johnny on the Trail. Both of them have a plethora of videos that will give you good information. Up and Adam Adventures, which is also Adam's Trail Mix, they really they're showing their Smoky Mountain 900 miler. Maybe not every one of them, but they're showing them. And then with the maps, yes, you get the Great Smoky Mountains Trail Map. It's put out by the National Park Service, and it's found in all the visitor centers. You can buy it online. Another map that I use that shows a little bit of different information if you want to know specific creeks or certain things like that. It's called the Great Smoky Mountains National Park Trail, and it's by Earthwalk Press, and I'll have that in the information for you as well.
And the other thing too, you said the word creek, so my mind went right to, you got to watch the weather in the Smokies too, not only for the high elevations, but in the lower elevations, the creek crossings. You got to watch and see, has it been raining for the last week?
Absolutely.
Because what is the trail where you cross the water like, I don't know, 20 or 30 times?
Hazel Creek.
Okay, yeah.
I hiked Eagle Creek back in the fall, and there hadn't been a lot of water, and we had 17 water crossings and like probably a half a dozen that were up to our thighs, and that was with low water.
Wow.
So yes, there is one that you absolutely have to watch, because while it comes out on a very popular area where people swim called Townsend, at the Townsend Y, you can't cross it if it's high water, and high water can be rain the night before. The website that I use a lot, and I will start looking about 6 days before, because it is a 6-day forecast of all the peaks in the Smokies and elsewhere, but it's called mountainforecast.com. And it gives me great information. It tells me if it's going to rain, how much, if it's going to snow, how much. It gives me elevation breakdowns. On some of these higher peaks, they'll give you a top, a mid, and a base. And that's really good information, along with whatever other, I use AccuWeather and NOAA both. So I'm kind of a trifecta of weather information just to make sure that I know what I'm doing. There is another one, and I'll give it to you. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it does give you the water elevations at the Townsend Y and the sinks and different places like that, but I'll have that for you as well.
Perfect. So yeah. We are going to give people some really, really good information.
Yes.
And we actually need to give them the name of your YouTube channel. So what is the name of it? We've been talking about it, but I haven't asked you the name of it.
So it's really hard. It is Cindy Hikes.
Okay, that's a tough one, everybody.
My daughter helped me put it all together, and I said, well, I need to come up with a catchy name. And she said, I think Cindy Hikes just does it. And I said, okay, so that's what it is.
Perfect. And you Cindy mentioned your Facebook group, your particular group that you manage. Yes. Johnny on the Trail, he's actually been on the show. He was episode number 10. So he's like an original.
An OG.
An original OG to the Jester Section Hiker podcast. And I'll link his episode too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Facebook, or not his episode, his Facebook group page, Hiking the Smokies. But you've started your own. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I have, back in the fall, I was going to go to the Smokies. My husband was going to go with me, but I was going to do a lot of day hiking. And I solo hike a lot, but I also like to hike with people. And so I had kind of started talking to these women, and we were developing this big day hike together. And we were having trouble communicating. Everybody was either on text or what have you. And one of them said, why don't you just make a group? So I did, and I made it private, and it's only for women for safety reasons.
Yep.
But it's a great place to go for women, whether you're solo hiking or you're hiking with someone else, to give your details, explain what you're wanting to do. If you say, hey, I want to hike Round Top on Friday, you could put it in there, and you could put your date and time or whatever, morning, and not have more of a safety cover, because it is just women in there, and yet have someone in there say, well, you know what, there's forecasted rain for 3 days. I don't know if that's a good idea. To where if you're not looking at all these resources, and I mean, because, you could miss anything, but also to where if you are going solo, but want somebody to join you, you can have someone join you. And it just, for me, it was just a safety measure to, especially meeting all these people. And now I consider them some of my dearest friends, but I didn't know any of them at the beginning. And so this is a good place for that information to go on Facebook, and you can learn and you can get to know them and then go hike with them.
That is excellent. So if I put that in the show notes, when people go on there, they're going to have to answer some questions or something like that,
yes.
right?
Yes. So to keep it as secure as we can, just for everyone to feel confident in sharing their details, yes, you'll have to answer some questions, and we do monitor it pretty well. Not that we have to know personally everyone that is in the group, but we do need to get a good feel that you are in either beginning or in the middle of, hiking your 900 miler and things like that, so that we know that it's legit. And then, then you can just hook up with all kinds of women in there.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So listen, you have, my goodness, you have been through a lot over the last 3 years. So how many miles have you completed in your 900 miler map?
So as of this recording, I started last February. So from this recording, a year, I have 307.4 miles. As of the air date in April, I should have 340.6. So that's about where I'm at. I assume that this year I'm going to get anywhere from a little over 200 to maybe 230 miles in, which will definitely put me well over halfway. So I have 11 trips planned for this year. And yes, I have them vaguely planned out. I'm a planner. I am a planner. So I have an idea of what I'm going to hike, but I also have alternates, just in case I can't hike a particular area.
Perfect. And we should mention too, besides all of the, you being a research nerd, you called yourself one, so that means I can call you a research nerd. I'm a research nerd too. I will wear something out before I go out.
That's me.
But that's good too. So you also, you're into logistics as well. And what I mean by that is not only the research, but you camp, you backpack, you day hike.
Mm-hmm.
So each trip, each of your 11, I'm imagining there are 11 different styles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first and foremost with the logistics, I always have to figure in that 6.5 hour drive, not only going, but coming.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot you were in Indiana already.
Yes. So there are times when I get out of the woods after those 4 days, get into my car and take off. I try to clean up, but I do take off. And I'm trying to get as much out of my 4 days as I possibly can, obviously.
Listen, riding home in that car all smelly, that is a badge of honor after you have hiked. Listen, I do it too. I actually love it. I'm like, nope, going home all stinky because you know what? I earned this.
And sometimes I have friends with me who will go and we don't smell each other. We've already been in the woods for 4 days. Yeah. We don't smell each other.
Everybody smells the same.
You do. It's amazing what baby wipes can do.
That's the problem. Everybody smells like a big baby wipe.
That's right. That's right. So logistically, starting off with that 6.5 hour drive, sometimes, most times I work until 7 p.m. So I'll get right in my car and head out. And so I'll stop somewhere at a hotel, or sometimes I'll get right to the edge of the Smokies in Gatlinburg and stop for the night and then start my day the next day. And that's if I'm backpacking or if I'm day hiking. But sometimes I will do like car camping at the campgrounds. The campgrounds, most of the campgrounds are, all the campgrounds are open summer to fall. There's a couple that are open over the winter, but I don't car camp in the winter. So I've got to decide, am I car camping? Am I day hiking? Am I staying in the backcountry? So I've got those three right there. So if it's the backcountry, I have to make the reservations for the backcountry, which are on the National Park Service site that you can find. Super easy to get there and figure out what I'm going to do there. But I have to look 30 days before I'm camping, because Smokies campsites are very popular. Like the AT shelters are very popular. I've got one coming up this spring that I've got to get in there 30 days prior because everybody wants to be on the shelters on the AT. So I've got that little bit of logistics. Hotels, especially, I try not to stay in hotels in season because they're going to be more expensive.
Oh yeah, you got
There's
the Cherokee, you
yes,
got the pit of Gatlinburg. Sorry, Gatlinburg people.
right. But it is true. It's true. So yeah, you want to stay out of those pits.
Yeah, you
Because
want
I
to stay
mean,
out of the
you can spend 2 hours getting to a trailhead or more, I guess. Yeah,
Yes,
you
you
stay out of the
can.
pits. So I typically will backpack in the summers. Well, my preferred is to backpack. I love to backpack, but like this trip in January I took, I went with a friend who I've just now gotten into hiking really good. The word tent did come up in her vocabulary, but she's not ready to backcountry camp. So when she said she was willing to go, well, of course, we're going to stay in a hotel and we're going to do day hiking. So yeah, all those
Yeah, you
logistics
know
come
what?
into
There's
play.
nothing wrong with that either.
Right. Absolutely. So
There's more
yeah,
than one way to get things done.
absolutely. And then I just take up all of my books and my maps. There's a few friends that I've gotten to know who I will call who live in the area, and I'll say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or they've already completed one, sometimes two maps. "Hey, what do you think about this this route? Do you think this is a good route?" And then yeah, I just kind of go from there.
Awesome. Well, listen, anybody, it's on my list. I'm telling you, it's on my list to do all 900 miles in the Smokies. And anybody that I know that is out working on a map or they've completed their map, it's a sisterhood and a brotherhood.
It is.
It truly is. And each one of you guys look out for each other. And
Yes.
listen,
And that's
go
why the
ahead.
Facebook page
Yeah.
works so well, because it is women, but all of us have one goal in mind, and we're all trying to help each other. And we're trying to work on something where we can actually share our completed maps with each other, so that we can maybe coordinate even better. But we are a sisterhood, we are a brotherhood.
And listen, I'm going to reach right out to you when I'm ready. I'm going to say, Cindy, I
Absolutely.
just need your spreadsheet because I don't want to think about it. I just want to know what you did and I'm going for it.
Absolutely.
So listen, thank you so much for, first of all, listening to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, emailing me. And now you're a friend of the show.
Oh.
So what that means is you're going to have to come back on and we're going to have to follow up and we're going to catch up here in a few months where you are, what you're doing, what's happening. And I'm going to turn it over to you. What do you want to leave the listeners with?
That's awesome. Again, thank you for having me on your show. I'm glad that I was able to add something to it. What I want to leave the listeners with is to know that if there's a goal that you want to do, and I guess this is more than just hiking, but you can do anything you set your mind to. You just need to be able to be committed. You need to have the time, determination, preparedness is huge, but also realism. And all of that combined, you can do anything. You can drive 6.5 hours and complete 900 miles. But also, I think something that's very important to always remember anywhere you're at, but for me, especially in the Smokies, it is a very spiritual place for many, me included. I just ask that you please recreate responsibly. We do have an influx of people who are enjoying the outdoors at this time now with COVID, and that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I just ask that you respect the shelters, the campsites, the buildings you pass, the rock walls, old cars, dishes, etc. Just please, you can enjoy them and you can be immersed in them, but just leave everything the way you came in. It's no different than LNT or leave no trace principles. Also, something that my husband and I started doing several years ago, and now I do in especially my day hikes. It's a little harder in my backpacking trips, but I do it, is carry a plastic bag with you, a Walmart sack, something that if you see even just the littlest piece of trash on the trail, pick it up, put it in your pack. It weighs nothing. And just kind of help us keep things clean, because we all want to be able to enjoy the Smokies and any other of the parks or any of the other public lands that we have out there. And if you do that, we can all really enjoy it and reach our goals.
Exactly. All right, Cindy. Thank you again. And you know what? We'll be hearing back from you here in a few months.
Wonderful. Thank you again for having me.
It was so great to connect with Cindy and share her journey to completing all of the 900 miles in the Smokies with all of you. Cindy, you are truly an inspiration, and I look forward to having you back on the show this coming fall. You can follow along with Cindy and her adventures over on YouTube by searching for Cindy Hikes and on Instagram at CLEATAY73. As always, you can go to the hikingradionetwork.com and click on the Jester Section Hiker Show to find all of today's show notes, pictures, and links mentioned in this episode. If you find value in what we do here at the network and want to give back to help in the production of our shows, you can always leave a donation by clicking on any one of the donate buttons found on our website. And please be sure to leave us a note on why you enjoy our shows. Thanks for listening. Be safe out there, everybody, and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word